Dan Quinn. And now here he is as a head coach. And he hires Cliff Kingsbury. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I don't even have a problem with that. Let me tell you where I have the problem. They're saying,
well, I guess it's that time of the year again. It's that time of the year to destroy some narratives. And once again, I am here to tell everybody that this right here is just another bad attempt at trying to do a race narrative, race card, all that type of stuff there. Now, guys, you have watched my content if you've been subscribed to me since 2020, and you know that this channel was originally a sports channel. Originally, it was designed to talk about sports and politics and why it is that fans, of course, were a little bit upset about what was going on with the whole racial narrative, all that type of stuff there. And of course, I have been, let's just say, I think I've been pretty well consistent when it comes to Stephen A. Smith. Like every now and again, I'll actually give him a W. Last time I had a video featuring him, I had to give him a W. I had to give him a win. As a matter of fact, that video is right here. You guys can go watch it if you want to. I advise you guys go check it out. Because it does, in fact, talk about American society and why it is that we are facing the situation that we're in. Because people think that if they are forced to play 65 games in a season, that it's suddenly like slavery or something like that. Because if they don't meet a certain threshold, they're not allowed to win an award. But this one right here is a little bit different. You see, I have to give Stephen A. an L. Now, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about football. Let's go ahead and dive into this. Now, really quick, before I play it, very, very quickly, I'll get to the full story of what's actually going on after you see this. The reason why is because the initial context is needed for this one here. The initial story, what's actually reported, is needed for me to provide the extra on the other side. Don't worry, I'll explain as we go through this video, but let's go ahead and roll it.
And over the weekend, they hired Cliff Kingsbury as the new OC in our nation's capital. After the news broke, our guy Adam Schefter tweeting this, let the speculation begin. Cliff Kingsbury coached Caleb Williamson last season. Williamson was a standout quarterback at Gonzaga High School in Washington, D.C. The Commanders currently hold the number 2 overall pick, are in striking distance of the number 1 pick that belongs to Chicago.
Okay, so here's the situation. Cliff Kingsbury, former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, and also to go on top of this, a college football offensive guru. He got a job with the Arizona Cardinals a few years ago. Didn't exactly work out the way he might have wanted to. They were trying to rebuild around him. They would eventually, let's put it this way here. When he got the job, he had Josh Rosen. That was his actual quarterback at the time. Arizona scrapped that. They chose to go with Kyler Murray. And of course, it hasn't exactly worked out the way they wanted to. Not saying it's because Kyler Murray sucks or anything. Not saying it's because Cliff Kingsbury sucked. Of course, if you actually look at the team and what they were trying to do, the rebuild, it just did not go the way they wanted to go. So before we get to this little narrative and this little race baiting narrative, it's a little bit more, let's just say a little bit more information is obviously needed here. So the thing that we constantly hear in the NFL is that there's not enough black head coaches, even though D'Amico Ryans got a job a year ago. Of course, that job was with the Houston Texans, and the Texans, of course, they actually surpassed their rebuild. They went 10-7, got the playoffs, and even got a playoff win. Hell of a job for D'Amico Ryans. D'Amico Ryans, by the way, did in fact deserve the job, but as I've said before on several occasions, if you are qualified, if you are somebody that, quite frankly, is good at what they do, then, quite frankly, you need the job. Of course, there are situations when some head coaches get passed over for the wrong reasons. Like, for example, the Atlanta Falcons, they had an opportunity to get Bill Belichick. And, of course, a lot of people think that Belichick has been tarnished because, obviously, Tom Brady did better than Belichick did without Tom Brady. But, of course, if you actually look into the situation, it's quite understandable given the fact that when Brady left the Patriots and went to Tampa, the team went 7-9, then the team went 10-7, or it was 11-6. Then they slid back for 2 straight years. But still, though, at the same time, the Atlanta Falcons, they chose to hire Raheem Morris, even though he's not really that good of a head coach. And recently, Mike Tomlin, head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, chose to hire fired Atlanta Falcons coach Arthur Smith. We'll get to that towards the end of the video. But once again, though, we got to go through the whole thing, the whole process of, well, certain people did not get a job because of their skin color, when in fact that was not the case. You see, there's a lot more nuance to this situation than people might would think. You see, Kingsbury, and not a fan of his, I really and truly could care less for him, but you got to give the man, you got to give credit where credit is due. You see, the Washington Commanders football team, also I like to call them the Washington Redskins, because that is what the hell they really and truly are, lawsuit still pending. they have chosen to hire him as their offensive coordinator. Now, the thing about Kingsbury is this here. Kingsbury knows the current crop of college quarterbacks. One of them, of course, is Caleb Williams. And, of course, the Washington Redskins, Commanders, Commies, whatever you might want to call them, they have the number 2 pick in the draft. And seeing how it is that the number 1 pick in the draft belongs to the Chicago Bears, and they seem like they're pretty set on Justin Fields, even though there's obviously some things to criticize there. It doesn't look like there's going to be a trade or anything. So, obviously, Caleb Williams looks like a pretty sure thing for the Washington Commies. And they have Dan Quinn as their head coach, who I got my own criticisms of. But don't you think it would make sense, seeing how it is that Caleb Williams knows Cliff Kingsbury, that maybe they might be able to work well together? We'll talk a little bit more about this here in a second, but let's go ahead and get to the nonsense.
In the Cliff Kingsbury, I'm really sorry that I have to get on him the way that I do, because I'm not really getting on him. It's the predicaments that he finds himself in that I'm lamenting, guys. And that's not his fault. If I'm Cliff Kingsbury and I coach in college football for 6 years and I don't do much, okay, I only have like 2 winning seasons, and somebody comes along and offers me a head coaching job in the NFL, I wouldn't turn it down. If I get fired after 4 years in Arizona when I only make 1 playoff appearance and obviously go to 1 playoff game or what have you, and only have 1 season with a winning record, and then they offer me an offensive coordinator's position in the National Football League, I'm not turning that down. I get that. It's not his fault. But I am not exaggerating when I say this. Cliff Kingsbury, the now former coach for the Arizona Cardinals, I challenge anybody in football to tell me I'm wrong about this. This man is more known for his relationships with quarterbacks and that fly-ass crib he had during the NFL draft when COVID was going on and we saw he's more known for that than he is for winning football games. That is a fact. It cannot be disputed, okay? And so when I look at it from that perspective and we talk about things, and I'm going to go here, doggy, we talk about diversity, and we certainly saw black coaches getting hired and all of that other stuff. That's not where I'm going.
Sounds to me like Caleb Williams, who more than likely may be selected as number 2 in the draft, has kind of got his heart set on Cliff Kingsbury. Don't worry, we'll be bringing up more of this over the course of this video, because trust me, there's a lot more nuance there that Stephen A. Smith does not want to talk about. Now, guys, you heard the first part of that, and you heard Stephen A. mention diversity for a second there, and of course he'll sit there and say that, no, that's not where I'm going at. No. Trust me, he does go into this. He would talk about this again on his own little podcast, which we'll get to towards the end of the video, because after he gets completely put in his place by Chris Mad Dog Russo and Damian Woody, he goes to his podcast and proceeds to raise hell about it. The thing is this right here. The reason why Stephen A. Smith is going crazy about this is because there's a certain head coaching candidate who has not been mentioned for a head coaching job. I'm pretty sure you guys might know who I'm talking about. Of course, if you don't, I'll go ahead and tell you now. It's Eric Bienemy. Eric Bienemy was the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, the Kansas City Chiefs in the Andy Reid era, they've won 2 Super Bowls. They've been to 3. They are currently about to go to their 4th, and they're doing this without Eric Bienemy. And even though the Kansas City Chiefs were definitely not as good offensively this year, it makes one think to themselves, you know what? Maybe they didn't really need Eric Bienemy. Now, Eric Bienemy has his own baggage, which we'll discuss a little bit later on in this video. But the thing is this right here. There is a reason why it is that NFL head coaches and NFL teams don't want to touch Eric Bienemy. Like I said, we'll get to it here in a second. But once again, the racial narrative is obviously about to be pumped. The race card, of course, is obviously about to be pulled. And here we are out here having to, let's just say, smash it. But let's watch a little bit more before we get to Russo and before we get to to Damian Woody. By the way, Damian Woody actually played in the NFL, so therefore he would obviously understand a lot more about this than Stephen A. Smith. The parrot is obviously out here just simply repeating his white daddy's lines.
Look at a guy like Cliff Kingsbury, and you know what we see as black folks? This is the kind of stuff that don't happen for black folks. So you're in college, right? And you got a good relationship with Kyler Murray. So we got the number 1 overall pick, we Arizona. So we gonna hire you because you ingratiated yourself with a kid in this family and you the right guy for the job. That works out for you with 1 playoff appearance in 4 years, okay? And 1 season and winning record. Now we fast forward years later. Now you're the offensive coordinator. Why you get that job? because they got the number 2 overall pick, and Caleb Williams is talking about, that's my dog. A puppy. Ain't thrown a damn pass in the National Football League yet. Okay, great, incredible talent, but breath smelling like Similac, wet behind the ears, ain't throw a damn pass in the NFL, but he vouching. Oh, that's my dog. That's my dog right there. And you get the offensive coordinator's job. It doesn't seem to me like there are bona fide football reasons as to why Cliff Kingsbury is the new offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. You couldn't produce, but
before I get to Mad Dog and before I get to Woody, I need to say this. Stephen A. Smith went crazy back during the 2017 NFL season. The reason why is because Colin Kaepernick, I'm pretty sure you guys know who this guy is, the kneeler, the guy who decided he wanted to wear a pro Fidel Castro shirt going into a press conference. He was not given a contract by the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins chose to give a one-year deal to Jay Cutler. Now, Jay Cutler, I know who very, very well because as a Packers fan, we used to pick Jay Cutler off all the time we played for the Bears. Well, the reason why the Miami Dolphins chose to sign Jay Cutler to a one-year contract, by the way, this would be the last time Cutler played in the NFL, is because the head coach there was Adam Gase. Adam Gase coached Jay Cutler when he was in Chicago as the offensive coordinator. So, therefore, Jay Cutler obviously has an understanding of the scheme that Adam Gase was running. And not to mention, it's also Miami, Florida, and you don't want to sign a guy who was very, very pro-Castro. That city's like 50% Cuban. Cubans are not exactly okay with that. So it was pretty obvious that the city of Miami would not be okay with Colin Kaepernick representing their football team. They'd be a little bit better off with Jay Cutler, even though Jay Cutler, quite frankly, let's just put it this way here. The smoking Jay Cutler meme obviously exists for a reason. The guy was obviously trash. Of course, the talent was, if he was on, he could be okay. And he proved that in Gase's system when he was the offensive coordinator for the Bears in the 2015 season. But the point is simply this right here. You wouldn't want Colin Kaepernick to be the quarterback of a team in Miami, Florida. That team, of course, represents a city that's 50% Cuban. Cubans don't like Castro. Cubans don't like communism. Cubans definitely did not like Kaepernick, except for, Dan Le Batard, who's just an idiot. But still, at the same time, though, you see what I'm saying? This is how mind-numbing this entire situation is. The answers are pretty obvious. The reason why it is that Cliff Kingsbury was selected is because the Washington football team, Redskins, Commanders, Commies, whatever you want to call them, they have the number 2 pick in the draft. And they're going to select Caleb Williams, who seems to know Kingsbury relatively well. But let's continue.
Against the Patriots, I did not like that hire, but I disagree with Steve on the Kingsbury thing. He did a very good job with Murray. He coached Mahomes at Texas Tech. Obviously, with Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams had a big-time year. I can't kill them. The offensive coordinator is the 3rd most important job now on a football team outside of the quarterback, the head coach. You need a good offensive coordinator to work with the QB. He knows how to work with quarterbacks. Look at the track record. I mean, do I love him as a head coach? Steve's 100% right. I don't. We killed him for a couple years ago when I first started here, and Steve was all over, and he was right. But this is a little different. All he's got to do is organize himself with the quarterback. He knows how to call plays. Murray did have a good year for him. He knows Caleb Williams. He had Mahomes at Texas Tech, for crying out loud. That's pretty good right out of the gate. Now, the one thing I will say about the Caleb Williams thing, Washington doesn't have the number 1 pick. And I'm not sure if Washington's going to go up there and give up a million ingredients to make that trade with the Bears to get it. They might get beat. So Williams makes it sound like it's a known deal. He's going to D.C. No, it's not. Because who knows where Williams is going right now. He's going to be the top player pick. And there might be another team that trades up to get him, and Washington doesn't want to match. So his tweet, well, good for him. Who cares? They don't got the number 1 pick, so it doesn't make any difference what Williams thinks. But the overall theme, I disagree with Steve. Steve's making it sound like he got the head coaching job. No, he didn't. He got the offensive coordinator's job.
Yeah, listen, I think that Cliff Kingsbury has been more of a guy that's been around these guys and actually developing these guys. Patrick Mahomes, yeah, he brought him
Chris Mad Dog Russo is a baseball guy. If he, and I understand that people know more than just one sport, my sport primarily. A lot of people don't know this about me, but my main sport is really baseball. Baseball is really my baby, but football's kind of been the one that I've gotten the best at over the years. The thing is this right here, it makes perfect sense to bring in the guy who knows the guy you're going to draft. Now, it does look a little bit shady on the surface, but then again, though, at the same time, how much shadier can, I mean, how shady can it get? Washington's got the number 2 pick in the draft. I mean, I do think they could have done a better job as far as head coaching candidates is concerned, but let's be honest. Dan Quinn was recently a part of a playoff football team, Cowboys. Of course, they got smashed. But up until that game, the Cowboys had a pretty daggone good defense. Maybe what Dan Quinn is doing is he's bringing in an offensive mind that understands the quarterback position very, very well and understands the quarterback that he's about to coach. Something else, too, that needs to be mentioned is that Kingsbury did help coach Pat Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is right now in the Super Bowl. Don't worry, we'll be bringing this back up here shortly, especially when we get to the whole topic of Eric Bienemy, which we'll get to here in a second. But, of course, what does Stephen A. Smith do? He goes to his own podcast after being put in his place, and you see for
He's out
yourself.
there. I'm not doing it, but that's beside the point. My point is that Cliff Kingsbury did nothing to get the job and then promptly got the head coaching job in Arizona and proved over a period of time that he didn't deserve the head coaching job to begin with. Well, here he is again. Except this time, it's not as a head coach, it's as an offensive coordinator. And it's not just as an offensive coordinator, it's for the Washington Commanders. A Washington Commanders team that was recently purchased for over $6 billion by Josh Harris, the owner of the Philadelphia 76ers and the National Basketball Association, by the way, who a part owner is Irving Magic Johnson, okay? The offensive coordinator at the time was Eric Bienemy, who was the former offensive coordinator in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes and had led them to 3 Super Bowls and 2 Super Bowl titles before he left because he couldn't get a head coaching job. So he went to Washington to better position himself to ultimately be considered for head coaching duties, where he coached under Ron Rivera. And lo and behold, they win 4 games. Ron Rivera gets fired, and they were trying to figure out what role they were going to play for him. And then they turn around after hiring Dan Quinn, who last we saw was the defensive coordinator in Dallas that did a damn good job until he was getting romped 48-16 with 6 minutes left in a playoff game against the Green Bay Packers with a quarterback in Jordan Love, who was quarterback.
Now, really quick, it's pretty obvious that we know where Stephen A. is going with this. He's got the scream, he's got the holler. Don't worry, we'll listen to the rest of it here in a second. But let's go back in time really quick. So DeMeco Ryans, he's hired for the head coaching job in Houston. If I remember correctly, Stephen A. Smith said that DeMeco Ryans should not take the job. I don't have the clip here, so it's a lot to find, but he actually said that DeMeco Ryans should not take the job. DeMeco Ryans took the job in Houston, and he got the team to the playoffs in the first year. Pretty daggone good job. And he did that with a rookie quarterback, by the way, in C.J. Stroud. Pretty good job. No problems. Nothing detected. There may be a regression next year, but still at the same time, no problems, nothing detected. Eric Bienemy, he was let go shortly after Ron Rivera was let go in Washington. And Arthur Smith was let go the day after. Actually, it was the day of the season, the day the season ended, from Atlanta. Mike Tomlin, black head coach, Super Bowl winning coach, been to 2 Super Bowls. He recently hired Arthur Smith. He hired Arthur Smith even after Eric Bienemy was let go. Eric Bienemy had been out there for a few days, but of course, Arthur Smith was hired instead. You guys kind of seeing where we're going with this? Truth be told about Eric Bienemy is this here, and don't worry, he'll talk about Eric Bienemy here in a second if he hasn't already brought him up, which of course I'm pretty sure he has, because listening to this thing over and over again just becomes mind-numbing. The truth about Eric Bienemy is that he has some baggage, and players, for the most part, just do not like him. I think it was Shady McCoy. I think he said back in 2022, at the end of the 2022 season, that Eric Bienemy did not need a head coaching job, which was just one player. But of course, if you look at the baggage that come from the University of Colorado when Bienemy worked there, it seems to me like coaches might want to avoid him, or teams may want to avoid making him a head coach. He just doesn't fit the mold. Some guys are just better at being coordinators. I mean, that's just kind of how the thing works. Bienemy is not exactly head coaching material, and his past kind of indicates this. But let's listen to one last bit.
Got Dan Quinn. And now here he is as a head coach. And he hires Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I don't even have a problem with that. Let me tell you where I have the problem. They're saying it's possible Kingsbury was the choice because Caleb Williams, the presumptive #1 overall pick coming up in this year's NFL draft out of USC, guess what? Wait for it. He has a close relationship with Cliff Kingsbury. Don't y'all find that amazing? So we ain't talking qualifications. Because you certainly didn't have him at Texas Tech, and you damn sure don't have him at Arizona Cardinals, NFL. But he's got a personal relationship. Well, why ain't he the player personnel director? He's got a great relationship with quarterbacks. Well, why ain't he the quarterback coach? Why you gotta be the offensive coordinator? Which everybody knows in today's day and age, when you're a head coach, you're getting plucked from the corridors of offensive
You
coordinator.
see, we're creating a racial narrative where it does not exist. Go back to what I was saying earlier. People were mad, at least the sports media was, when Colin Kaepernick was snuffed by the Miami Dolphins. Never mind the fact that earlier that year he had worn a pro-Castro shirt, and yet he was looking to sign a contract with a team in Miami, Florida, in a city that had 50% Cubans. That's a city that, quite frankly, does not like communism, and they hate Castro. They fled Castro. They got on boats, and they went through shark-infested waters to get to Florida, to get to the United States, to get the hell away from Castro. But we got to keep up the racial narrative. They signed Jay Cutler because he knew the scheme that Adam Gase was implementing. Also, something else too about Eric Bieniemy's coaching success. It came out recently that Eric Bienemy has not been the one calling the plays in Kansas City. It was actually Andy Reid. And before Andy Reid took over the full play calling duties, Matt Nagy was the play caller. Matt Nagy happens to be the play caller, happens to be on the staff this year. The Chiefs are in the Super Bowl. They did that without Eric Bienemy. So maybe Eric Bienemy is not that good. I mean, if Eric Bienemy was so great, then why couldn't he get Sam Howell to turn around? I mean, Washington only won 4 games. Why couldn't he fix that offense? The point is this right here. You make these hirings based on qualifications, and you make these hirings based upon the scheme. Sometimes you make these hirings based on the players that you're about to draft. I mean, if Washington had like the 10th pick in the draft, but the Jets have it, and maybe if they, maybe then Stephen A would have a case. But he doesn't have a case in this situation. This where it's just more faux mythical racism. It's just more racist. They didn't hire a black head coach. That's all the hell this is. This is just more BS. And it's pretty easy to sniff out. Fact of the matter is that Eric Bienemy did not get a job for a reason. He's been passed over every year when it comes to head coaching, even by black head coaches. Mike Tomlin had a chance to hire him. He wouldn't hire him. Why not? Probably because Mike Tomlin knows the guy's crap. That's probably the reason why. How many other head coaching opportunities has Eric Bienemy been on the list for? And how many times have teams said, no, screw this guy. We know what the hell is going on in Kansas City. Andy Reid is calling the plays there, not Bienemy. Bienemy just simply runs the training camp, which sometimes is all the hell you may need. But still at the same time, it's pretty obvious that Eric Bienemy did not get the job because Eric Bienemy sucks. And I know somebody's going to say that Cliff Kingsbury sucks. And you know what? You'd have a valid point. 28-37 was his record as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. But need I remind you right now that Eric Bienemy did not get the job in Kansas City as the offensive coordinator during a rebuild. Cliff Kingsbury got the head coaching job in Arizona as a result of a rebuild. They got rid of the previous year's draft class, including the quarterback Josh Rosen, to rebuild it to Cliff Kingsbury's likeness. It just so happens to be they got it wrong. But due to Kingsbury's relationship and development of other young quarterbacks in college and other players in the offseason, it looks to me like maybe Washington is making the right choice by not selecting Eric Bienemy. I just figure I'd throw that out there. And one last point, and it's a point that I already made in this video, but I'm going to go ahead and make it one final time. Washington has the number 2 pick in the draft. The Bears do not appear to want to move on from Justin Fields because they are going through their own rebuild. And if the Bears, by some odd chance, chose to select offensive line or wide receiver with the number 1 pick in the draft, even if they were to completely suck next year, chances are the Bears would just end up with the number 1 pick in the draft again, meaning that they can run through this entire process, select a quarterback, have high draft picks, pick the team around the new quarterback, and they'll be okay because they know they have time. Washington, on the other hand, says, you know what, we're basically in the same exact situation. They've got the number 2 pick in the draft. So why not bring in the guy that Caleb Williams knows very well, and let's go ahead and get to work. It seems to me like Washington is taking advantage of a perfect situation, a perfect storm. That's why Washington's doing this. And Stephen A. Smith is just looking for a race-baiting narrative that, quite frankly, does not exist. But hey, you guys tell me in the comments section. I'd love to hear what you guys have got to say on this. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sound off in the comment section. It looks like tomorrow is going to be a triple up day. Reason why, of course, is because obviously I fell behind, and of course I was able to get the video I wanted to post last night up to date. But don't worry though, there'll be additional videos out on Wednesday. So make sure you guys stick around for all of them. Please tell me what you think in the comment section. Once again, thumbs up, subscribe, share the video, sound off in the comment section. I'll see you guys later.